You know those movie scenes where someone's world just shatters into a million pieces? Yeah, that was me. Just a few weeks ago, I was in the shower, cold water running, trying to drown out the sound of my own quiet sobs. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely type, trying to make sense of how the man I loved, the man I'd literally just renewed my vows with, saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM. It's a truth so brutal, it still steals my breath. Connor. That name used to feel like sunshine, like coming home. We'd been married for 3 years, and for every single one of them, he seemed different. Not like the other guys my family's money usually attracted. We're comfortable, you know? Not Kardashian-level rich, but enough that bills are never a drama. He was middle class, and my naive little heart genuinely believed that meant he loved me, not my bank account. Just last weekend, we had this sweet, intimate vow renewal. Close friends, family, the whole 9 yards. He even cried, real tears, telling me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. And me? Oh, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. My girls' trip to Nashville? Months in the making, and it went sideways almost immediately. Tina got food poisoning, some kind of emergency. The universe, apparently, has a twisted sense of humor, because it rerouted me straight into my own personal horror movie. I figured, hey, surprise Connor. I imagined his face lighting up, those sad puppy eyes he'd text me from the couch. So I grabbed his favorite nachos and that fancy craft beer he loves, and I snuck in through the garage. Our house has this weird layout. You can't see the living room from the garage entry. But I heard his voice from his gaming room upstairs. On the phone, just him. I set the food on the counter and crept up, ready for my big reveal. And then it hit me, like a punch to the gut. Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision. I froze, halfway up the stairs. My heart was going a million miles an hour. I just knew it had to be a joke, waiting for his laugh. But it never came. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. The only good thing about this whole situation is that I don't have to worry about rent or bills anymore. The words just carved into me, shattering every single illusion. That vow renewal? Pure torture, man. Had to stand there making up all this romantic bullshit while her family looked on all misty-eyed. And then he laughed. A genuine laugh. The cruelest echo of those tears he'd shed just days before. He even called it Oscar-worthy. And me? The money wife. That's what he called me. 3 years, and I was just the money wife. I don't even know how I did it, but I somehow retreated, silent as a ghost, back downstairs. I grabbed the untouched food and beer, and slipped out. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 2 solid hours, just sobbing until mascara ran down my face like rivers. An old lady knocked on my window, asking if I was okay. My dog died. I choked out. The first of probably 100 lies I'd tell. I drove for hours, every single memory replaying, but now with this new, horrifying filter. All those times he insisted on paying for dinner, but only at super cheap places. His reluctance to let me help with his student loans until I practically forced him. His big dreams, always just out of reach, until my dad offered connections. Our anniversary gift, an engraved sign for our entryway that read, "Where your story begins." It just mocked me. I'd stared at it that very morning, believing our next chapter was just beginning. Turns out, our story was just a financial transaction for Connor. So, what did I do? I went back to Nashville. 3 days of pretending everything was fine with my girlfriends, dying inside, probably drinking way too much wine, then coming home at my original time. I greeted him with a kiss. I looked into the eyes of the man who called our marriage a nightmare and kissed him, like nothing was wrong. 5 days I lived that lie. 5 days of sleeping next to someone who regretted waking up beside me. 5 days of dissecting every interaction, every word, wondering what was real and what was part of his Oscar-worthy performance. And then the paranoia started. I checked our accounts. Connor had been making these weird small withdrawals. 200 here, 300 there, always just under the amount that would spark a conversation. Where was it going? Was he saving for his big escape? Another woman? The thought actually made me sick. I hadn't told anyone. Not my friends. And especially not my family. My dad absolutely adored him, calling him the son he never had. It would just shatter him to know Connor saw him only as a meal ticket. But I started making tiny, subtle changes. I accidentally left open a browser tab showing my separate bank account info. I casually mentioned that my dad was reconsidering some business ventures due to economic concerns. I started working late, being less affectionate, taking more calls in private. When our bathroom sink, which had been leaking for weeks, went unfixed, I called a plumber without telling him. You should have seen Connor's face when the guy showed up. His mental calculation of $85 wasted was a small, sweet victory. My plan was working. He was getting nervous. That afternoon, while I was running errands, he called me 27 times in 1 hour. 27. When I finally called back, he was frantic, asking if everything was okay, if I was mad, if something happened with my family. I played it cool, said my phone was in my purse at Target, and asked why he would even think otherwise. The silence on his end was deafening. So, here I am, locked in the bathroom, shower running, trying to figure out what the heck is next. I need to confront him, but I need to be smart about it. Joint accounts, my huge mistake. My name on the mortgage, his on the deed. Everything tangled up in this messy knot. Part of me just wants to scream, but another part is screaming for strategy. What if I slowly withdraw emotionally, while getting all my financial ducks in a row? What if I document everything? What if I just let him think everything is peachy until it's decidedly not peachy for him? Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. He spent 3 years lying to my face. Maybe I can manage a few weeks of the same. I have to go. The hot water's running out, and he'll wonder why I've been in the shower for 45 minutes. I'm going out there. I'm going to kiss my husband goodnight, and I'm going to lie beside him while planning my exit. He just texted, asking if I want to go away for the weekend to reconnect. The sheer audacity of this man. I'll update when I can. Hey everyone. Wow, thank you all for the overwhelming support. I truly read every single comment, and you guys really gave me the strength to get through these past 2 weeks. Sorry for the delay in updating, but Connor has developed this charming new habit of glancing at my phone, so I've had to be super careful. It's been 14 days since I overheard my husband call our marriage a nightmare, and me his meal ticket. 14 days of sleeping next to someone who regrets waking up beside me. And 14 days of the most exhausting performance of my life. The day after my last post, I decided to become a master strategist. No emotional reactions, no confrontations, until every single piece of this puzzle was perfectly lined up. I made a list, like a proper spy novel. Secure my finances, gather evidence, find out just how deep his deception goes, prepare an exit, and quietly build a support network without revealing absolutely everything just yet. First up, finances. I called my personal bank, the account he doesn't have access to, beefed up the security, changed all my passwords, and made sure they knew not to discuss anything with anyone but me. Then, I started slowly, almost imperceptibly, moving money from our joint accounts into my personal one. Tiny amounts daily, just enough to avoid raising any red flags. Is it wrong? Maybe. But let's be real, finding out your husband is a gold-digging liar really changes your perspective on fairness, doesn't it? The weekend reconnection trip he suggested? I agreed, but slyly suggested my family's rustic cabin by the lake instead of his fancy luxury resort idea. Y'all, his face. It flashed with disappointment for a split second, quickly masked by an anything for you babe smile. But it clicked everything into place for me. His pushing for expensive options when my family might cover it. His sudden budget consciousness when the money was coming from our accounts. The cabin trip was unexpectedly revealing. Our Wi-Fi barely worked, and Connor spent the whole weekend glued to his phone, constantly complaining about the signal. He kept wandering down to the dock, apparently for that single elusive bar. I followed him once, super quietly, and overheard him telling someone he was going crazy, trapped in the middle of nowhere, and would make it up to them when he got back. Who was them? What was he making up? When we got home, he immediately announced he needed to run to Walmart for work. He was gone for over 2 hours. For a Walmart that's 12 minutes away. Later, checking our credit card app, no Walmart charge, but a $60 charge from a bar across town. During the trip, I also accidentally mentioned my dad was considering early retirement due to health concerns. Totally made up, of course, and might be scaling back his business. Connor spent the next hour asking increasingly detailed questions about Dad's plans, family trusts, and our future security. Barely a peep about Dad's fictional health. It was like watching someone rip off their mask without even realizing they were doing it. I've also been doing some serious digging through our financial history, and what I found made me physically sick. Over 3 years, Connor had borrowed nearly $17,000 from our joint accounts for business expenses and investments. Money that never returned, and he couldn't properly account for. And there was this pattern of large withdrawals right before he'd visit his hometown, which made me suspect he was supporting someone or something there I didn't know about. Last week, while he was at the gym, I went through his nightstand. Inside, a second phone. A cheap, prepaid one from Target. Password protected, naturally. But get this. He'd scribbled the code on a sticky note on the back. Classic Connor. Always forgetting passwords. The phone had one contact, D, with dozens of texts arranging meetups and discussions about money. Some referenced the long-term plan and staying the course. And one from 3 months ago literally said, "Just 2 more years and we're set." 2 more years until what? I took pictures of everything before carefully replacing it. The psychological warfare has been the strangest part. I've been subtly altering my behavior, a little less affectionate, more private calls, casually mentioning our family lawyer in passing. Nothing confrontational, just different. And Connor is losing it. 2 nights ago, he actually went through my closet while I was in the shower. I only knew because he left my boots in a different order. Yes, I'm that person. When I came out, I rearranged them silently while he watched from the bed, pretending to be on his phone. Yesterday, I found him scrolling through my iPad search history while I made dinner. I'd intentionally left searches like signs your husband is cheating and separate bank accounts in marriage for him to find. When I walked in, he practically threw the iPad onto the couch and started rambling about how much he loved the lasagna I was making, even though I was clearly making stir-fry. Our fridge had been making this weird clicking sound for months, and Connor always said he'd fix it. Yesterday, I casually mentioned, maybe we should just buy a new one, and he immediately went into fix-it mode, spending 2 hours tinkering with it. Suddenly, all those household tasks he'd been putting off were getting done. The squeaking bathroom door, fixed. The broken porch light, replaced. The wobbly kitchen table, stabilized. It's like watching someone frantically trying to prove their value. I've started having lunch with Loretta once a week. My best friend since college, and the only person I've told. She was shocked, then absolutely furious, and has become my co-conspirator. She helped me set up a separate email account and suggested documenting everything, which has been a lifesaver. Last Wednesday, I was working late at a client meeting. Truthfully, I was at Starbucks, scrolling "Our Surviving Infidelity" and taking notes. Connor showed up unannounced with dinner. He'd never, ever done that in 3 years. He claimed he missed me, but spent the entire dinner interrogating me about a call he'd overheard with Loretta where I mentioned making big changes. The call was about redoing our guest bedroom, but he didn't need to know that. Then came the 27 calls incident. I now realize what triggered it. I'd left printouts from our joint account on my desk that morning, showing his large withdrawals. I hadn't confronted him, just left them there. When I came home, the papers were moved. He'd seen them, panicked, and that's why he bombarded me with calls. When I finally called back, our conversation went like this. "Hey, what's the emergency? My phone was in my desk during meetings." He breathed heavily. "No emergency, just... Is everything okay with you? With us? You've been different since you got back from Nashville." "Different how?" "I don't know, just... distant? And you've been taking a lot of private calls. And you mentioned something about your dad reconsidering his business plans. I'm worried about you." Notice how he slipped in concern about my dad's business right between fake concerns for me? Classic Connor move that I never recognized before. "Everything's fine. Just busy with work. Why would anything be wrong?" The silence was so long I thought the call had dropped. "No reason. I just love you, that's all." "I love you too." The biggest lie I've ever told. After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried for almost an hour. Not because the marriage was ending, but because I was mourning the relationship I thought I had. The Connor I fell in love with doesn't exist. He's a character, played by a man who sees me as nothing but a bank account with a body attached. Last night, he suggested another vow renewal ceremony for our parents. When I asked why the sudden interest, he stammered something about celebrating our love with everyone important. Translation: he's panicking about his gravy train derailing and wants to cement his position with my family. I smiled and said, maybe next year. The relief on his face was palpable. What he doesn't know is I've already spoken to a lawyer. Not our family lawyer, but someone Loretta recommended. I have an appointment next week to discuss my options. I've documented all the financial discrepancies, secured my personal documents and irreplaceable family heirlooms by taking them to Loretta's for a photo shoot for her Instagram. Another lie, but hey, I learned from the master. The weirdest thing happened this morning. I was getting ready for work, and Connor came up behind me in the bathroom, hugged me, and started crying. Actual crying. Said he felt like he was losing me and didn't know why. For a split second, I almost broke down and confronted him. But then I remembered the conversation I overheard, him laughing about his Oscar-worthy performance. I just patted his arm and told him everything was fine. Just busy at work. His tears dried remarkably quickly when I mentioned I might have to postpone our trip to New York next month. The one where we were supposed to stay in that 5-star hotel his Instagram influencer friend recommended. Funny how his emotional crisis evaporated at the mention of a luxury experience potentially slipping away. The confrontation is coming. I'm almost ready. But I want him to sweat a little more, to feel the ground shifting under his feet without understanding why. I want him to experience just a fraction of the uncertainty and betrayal I've been feeling. Is that petty? Maybe. But when someone shatters your entire reality, I think you're entitled to a little pettiness. Thankfully, we have no kids. Connor always had just one more thing to accomplish before starting a family. I now realize that one more thing was establishing himself enough to leave with half my assets. He just texted asking if we can have dinner at my parents' house this weekend. Says he misses them. I bet he does. Hey y'all, it's been about a month since my last update, and holy moly, so much has happened. Thank you for all your support and advice. I've read every single comment, even the ones questioning my methods. Trust me, I've questioned them myself every step of the way. So, picking up where we left off. After discovering Connor had been secretly siphoning money and only staying with me for my family connections, I spent weeks quietly gathering information and preparing my exit. I was planning to confront him after everything was perfectly in order. But as often happens, life had other plans. Remember that dinner at my parents' house Connor was so eager to have? We went last weekend, and it was, well, let's just say, enlightening. Connor was in full charm mode, radiating perfect son-in-law vibes. He complimented my mom's new curtains, asked my dad super detailed questions about his golf game, even offered to help my sister set up her new Sonos system. To anyone watching, he was Mr. Perfect. But now that I knew what to look for, I could see the cold, hard calculation behind every single interaction. During dinner, Connor casually mentioned he'd been researching investment properties in my parents' neighborhood. My dad, bless his innocent heart, immediately started talking about how property values in their area were expected to rise 20% in the next 5 years. Y'all, Connor's eyes actually lit up. I'm not exaggerating. It was like watching a slot machine hit the jackpot. That night, after we got home, I found him on our iPad looking at properties way above our price range. When I asked how we could possibly afford them, he just smiled and said my dad had mentioned helping with the down payment. My dad had said absolutely nothing of the sort. The very next morning, I had my meeting with the lawyer Loretta recommended. She was amazing, direct, supportive, and incredibly thorough. She helped me understand exactly what I was entitled to and what Connor might try to claim. The good news? Our prenup offered some protection, though not as much as I'd like. The better news? The financial forensics we did revealed a pattern of deception that could potentially invalidate significant portions of the prenup. While I was meeting with the lawyer, Connor was apparently having a complete meltdown at home. I'd accidentally left my laptop open that morning with a browser tab showing flights to my cousin's place in California. A little part of my exit strategy, you know? When I got home, Connor had prepared an elaborate dinner with all my favorites. Wine, candles, the works. He was trying so hard to be charming, but there was this desperate, almost frantic edge to everything. His hands were actually shaking when he poured the wine. During dinner, he kept dropping these bizarre comments about how much he loves our life together, how grateful he is for me, not my family, specifically me, and how he's never been happier. It was like watching someone perform a role they hadn't quite learned all the lines for. Then came the bombshell. He suggested we start trying for a baby. Right now. This, from the man who had spent 3 years finding every excuse under the sun to delay starting a family. I nearly choked on my wine. I asked why the sudden change of heart. Connor gave me this whole speech about realizing what truly matters in life, and how he's finally ready for the next step in our journey together. He actually got teary-eyed, y'all. Oscar-worthy indeed. I smiled and said, "That's quite a coincidence, because I've been doing some thinking about our future, too." The flicker of hope that flashed across his face was almost sad. I continued, "In fact, I've been reflecting a lot on our relationship since I got back from Nashville." The hope vanished, replaced by something closer to pure panic. He reached for his wine glass so quickly he nearly knocked it over. He asked what kind of reflections I was having. That's when I decided to start laying my cards on the table. Not all of them, but enough to watch him squirm. I said I'd been thinking a lot about honesty in marriage. About what people really want versus what they say they want. Connor's face went so pale I actually thought he might pass out. He asked what that meant. Instead of answering directly, I asked if he remembered what he said in his vows at our renewal ceremony. About how meeting me was the best thing that ever happened to him. He nodded, attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. I asked if he meant it. "Of course I did," he said, reaching for my hand across the table. "I meant every word." I pulled my hand away slowly. "That's interesting, because I could have sworn I heard you tell Danny that the vow renewal was pure torture, and that you had to make up romantic bullshit while my family looked on." The color drained from his face completely. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. When he finally tried to speak, I just kept going. Or maybe I misheard. Maybe you didn't call our marriage a nightmare and say you wake up regretting your decision every day. Maybe I imagined the part where you said the only good thing about our relationship is my family's money. Connor knocked over his wine glass then, sending red wine cascading across our white tablecloth. He didn't even move to clean it up. He just stared at me with this expression of pure, unadulterated horror. When he finally managed to ask when I heard it, I told him. "When I came home early from Nashville to surprise you." Surprise. "Baby, you completely misunderstood," he started, his voice taking on that soothing, condescending tone he uses when he thinks I'm being emotional. "I was just venting to Danny about a rough patch. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated." "A rough patch?" I repeated. "Interesting. And which part was the misunderstanding? The part where you called me the money wife? Or the part where you said you're only sticking around until you're established enough to have options?" His face went from pale to a ghastly gray. He clearly hadn't realized how much I'd heard. He stammered that it was taken completely out of context. "Then please, Connor, explain the context where telling your friend our marriage is a nightmare, and you're only with me for financial gain makes sense." He couldn't, of course. Instead, he switched tactics faster than a chameleon changing colors, going from denial to tearful apology in mere seconds. He claimed he'd been going through a personal crisis when I overheard him, that he didn't mean any of it, that he loved me more than anything. I just sat there watching this performance with new eyes. All the things I used to find sincere, the tender glances, the earnest declarations, the vulnerable moments, now looked like carefully calculated moves in a long con. "Are you leaving me?" he finally asked, his voice a whisper. "I haven't decided yet," I lied. Of course I had decided, but he didn't need to know that just yet. What followed was 2 weeks of the most exhausting emotional manipulation I've ever experienced. Connor pulled out all the stops. He sent flowers to my office every single day with increasingly desperate notes. He contacted my parents, claiming he was worried about my sudden change in behavior. He suggested couples therapy, which was frankly hilarious coming from someone who thought our marriage was a nightmare. He even reached out to Loretta, trying to get her to talk some sense into me. The most telling part? During his entire campaign to save our marriage, he never once mentioned my family's financial situation. It was like he was carefully avoiding the very thing that had motivated him all along. Meanwhile, I just kept executing my plan. I moved the remaining funds from our joint accounts into my secured personal accounts. I spoke with my family's financial advisor to ensure Connor couldn't access any family assets. I packed essentials and irreplaceable items and moved them to a storage unit Connor doesn't know about. I also had a private, incredibly difficult conversation with my parents. My dad has always thought of Connor as the son he never had, and my mom adored him for, supposedly, making me happy. Telling them that their beloved son-in-law was a fraud who only wanted their money and connections nearly broke them. Dad wanted to confront Connor immediately, but I convinced them to follow my lead for just a little longer. The dishwasher broke down 3 days ago. Perfect timing, right? Connor immediately volunteered to call someone to fix it, which was super unusual since he normally complains about repair costs. I said we should just buy a new one, and he agreed without even asking about the price. He's desperately trying to appear unconcerned about money now, bless his heart. Last night, we attended a dinner party at my friend Scarlett's new house. Connor has always found Scarlett a bit much, his words, with her loud personality and unfiltered opinions. But last night, he was hanging on her every word, laughing at all her jokes, even complimenting her TikTok dance videos that he's previously called embarrassing at her age. Halfway through dinner, Scarlett's boyfriend Lucas, who knows nothing about my situation, casually mentioned a news story about a guy who had scammed his wealthy wife for years. Everyone laughed about what an idiot the man was to think he could get away with it. Everyone except Connor, who suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. When Lucas asked him what he thought about the story, Connor muttered something about not all relationships being what they seem on the surface. The table went quiet. I could feel Scarlett looking at me, totally confused by the sudden tension. I just smiled and asked her to pass the salt. On the drive home, Connor was unusually quiet. When we pulled into our garage, he turned to me with this desperate look and asked if everything was really okay between us. I told him I didn't know what he meant. He said things had felt off for weeks, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Maybe you should check your conscience if you're feeling that something's wrong." He flinched like I'd slapped him. This morning, I found him going through our wedding album, something he hasn't looked at in years. He claimed he was feeling nostalgic, but the panic in his eyes told a very different story. He's trying to find clues about how much I know and what I'm planning to do about it. I've scheduled a meeting with my parents and our family financial advisor for tomorrow. Connor thinks it's about some routine trust matter, but it's actually to formally remove him as a beneficiary from several accounts and to discuss the implications of our upcoming divorce. I've already warned my parents to act completely normal until after the meeting. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just tired. Tired of the performance, tired of watching him scramble to maintain his facade, tired of pretending I don't know our entire marriage has been a business transaction to him. Tonight, Connor suggested we take a second honeymoon to reconnect. He showed me pictures of this ridiculously expensive resort in Bali on his phone, talking about infinity pools and private beaches. The old me would have been thrilled. The new me just wondered how much of my family's money he was planning to spend on this last-ditch effort. I smiled and told him it sounded lovely. But maybe we should talk about it after the meeting with my parents tomorrow. The relief on his face was immediate. He clearly thinks he's still got time to fix whatever's broken. He doesn't realize that by this time tomorrow, his carefully constructed world will be in pieces. The meeting with my parents and the advisor is scheduled for 10 a.m. By 11, he'll know that I've known everything for weeks. By noon, he'll be faced with the reality that the gravy train has not only stopped, but is reversing course at high speed. He just texted asking if I want sushi for dinner tonight. Says he wants to treat me to something special before our big financial meeting tomorrow. If he only knew. Okay, deep breath, everyone. I want to start by thanking every single one of you who supported me through this journey. Your comments, messages, and advice helped me find strength on days when I felt like I was drowning. I promised a final update when everything was settled, so here it is. The conclusion to my story. So, that meeting with my parents and the financial advisor? It went exactly as planned. And y'all, Connor's face when he realized what was happening? That's something I'll cherish forever. We all sat down in my dad's home office. Me, Connor, my parents, and Mr. Bradshaw, our family's financial advisor since I was a kid. Connor was all smiles, probably thinking this was his golden ticket, his chance to finally cement his position in the family finances. Dad started by asking Connor if there was anything he wanted to tell us before we began. Connor looked utterly confused but said no. Everything was great. Dad just nodded and then pulled out a folder containing printouts of Connor's secret withdrawals from our joint account, screenshots of text messages to Dee about the long-term plan, and the coup de grace, a transcript of the phone call I'd overheard where he called our marriage a nightmare. You guys should have seen Connor's face. It was like watching someone's entire world collapse in slow motion. He went from confused to shocked to panicked to furiously calculating in about 10 seconds flat. He immediately tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been going through a rough time and had said things he didn't mean. Mom, who had been quietly seething since I told her everything, finally lost it. She called him a gold-digging parasite and said she'd never been so disappointed in her judgment of character. Connor actually tried to appeal to her, saying they'd always had such a special bond and that she knew the real him. Mom just laughed and asked which version was the real him, the one who called his marriage a nightmare, or the one who cried during his vow renewal. The meeting ended with Mr. Bradshaw explaining that Connor had been formally removed from all family accounts, trusts, and business interests. Dad then, very calmly, informed him that divorce papers would be delivered to him that afternoon, and that he had 24 hours to remove his personal belongings from our house. Connor's final play was turning to me with tears in his eyes. Actual tears. The man truly deserves an Emmy. He asked if I was really going to throw away 3 years of marriage over one stupid conversation. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I wasn't throwing away anything. He'd already done that when he decided I was nothing but a meal ticket. The divorce process itself was surprisingly quick. It turns out when one party has overwhelming evidence that the other entered the marriage under fundamentally fraudulent pretenses, and that party also happens to have the resources for good lawyers, things can move efficiently. Connor fought it at first, demanding half of everything, including future interests in my family's business. His initial counteroffer was so outrageous, even his own lawyer looked embarrassed. But his position weakened considerably when my team presented the evidence. The unexplained withdrawals, the hidden accounts we'd discovered, and most damning of all, the recordings of him admitting he'd married me for financial gain. In the end, he walked away with significantly less than he'd hoped for, though still more than he deserved in my opinion. The most satisfying moment came during our final mediation session. Connor's lawyer brought up his significant contributions to building my career and supporting my family's business interests. My attorney simply played the recording of Connor telling Danny that being my husband was his meal ticket and referring to me as the money wife. The look on Connor's face when he realized his own words had completely destroyed his leverage was priceless. Beyond the legal proceedings, these past 6 months have been a roller coaster. The first few weeks after the confrontation were the hardest. I cycled through rage, grief, humiliation, and crushing self-doubt. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? My therapist, yes, I got an excellent therapist, best decision ever, helped me understand that Connor's deception wasn't successful because I was stupid or naive. It was successful because he was calculating and a skilled manipulator. She helped me see that trusting someone isn't a weakness. Breaking that trust is the failure, not giving it. I moved out of our house even before it was sold. Too many memories tainted by the knowledge that Connor had been performing, rather than loving me there. I found a beautiful apartment downtown, much smaller than our house but completely mine, decorated exactly as I want with no consideration for anyone else's preferences. The first night in my new place was weirdly hard. I'd been so focused on the logistics, setting up utilities, changing my address on Amazon, figuring out where all my random kitchen gadgets should go, that I hadn't prepared for the emotional impact. But slowly, I've been rediscovering parts of myself that had gradually disappeared during my marriage. Remember how Connor always said my laugh was too loud in public? Last week, I snorted laughing at a TikTok while waiting in line at Starbucks and didn't even think to apologize. Baby steps, right? My relationship with my parents has actually deepened through all this. Dad apologized to me, which caught me completely off guard. He said he worried that growing up with wealth had made me a target, and that he should have better prepared me for people who might see me as an opportunity, rather than a person. It was the most vulnerable conversation we've ever had. Mom has gone full mama bear mode, checking in on me daily and sending me articles with titles like 10 Signs That Man Is Just After Your Money and How to Spot a Gold Digger. It's a bit much, but I appreciate the sentiment. She's also set me up on 3 blind dates already, all with men she's personally vetted for financial independence. I've declined them all. I'm nowhere near ready, but her heart's in the right place. My friends have been incredible, especially Loretta and Scarlett, who have shown up for me in ways I can never repay. Tina, unfortunately, sided with Connor initially. They had been friends before Connor and I met, and she believed his version of events. The strangest part has been running into mutual friends who don't know the whole story. Last week, I bumped into Connor's friend Danny. Yes, that Danny who he was talking to on the phone, at Target. He did this weird half-wave, then pretended to be really interested in paper towels. I just smiled and kept walking. Later, I saw him watching me from the parking lot as I loaded my car. It was clear Connor had told him some version of events that painted me as the villain. Whatever. I don't have the energy to care what Connor's bros think anymore. Last month, Connor actually showed up at my apartment unannounced. He said he wanted to talk, to explain himself. I told him he'd had 3 years to be honest with me, and I wasn't interested in whatever story he'd crafted now. He tried to hand me a letter, which I refused to take. He left it in my mailbox anyway. For a moment, I considered burning it unopened, but curiosity won out. It was a strange mix of apology and justification. He claimed he truly had grown to love me despite his initial motivations, that he regretted his words to Danny, that he missed us and the life we had built. I read it once, then shredded it without responding. His words have no power over me anymore. According to Loretta's cousin who works at that fancy steakhouse downtown, Connor is now dating the daughter of one of my dad's business associates. She's been warned, of course, but has decided Connor is misunderstood, and that I clearly did something to provoke his behavior. Some lessons have to be learned firsthand, I suppose. I've also gotten really into cooking, something Connor always dominated in our relationship. Last night I made this amazing mushroom risotto that actually turned out edible. Progress. Do I still have bad days? Absolutely. Sometimes I wake up furious that I gave 3 years of my life to someone who saw me as nothing but a bank account. Sometimes I worry about trusting anyone romantically again. Sometimes I still replay conversations and interactions, looking for signs I should have seen. The divorce was finalized last month, 47 days faster than average for our county. Seriously, who knew efficiency could feel so good? The house sold quickly, and I used my portion to pay off some student loans I'd been carrying forever and invested the rest. Connor tried to claim emotional distress and damage to his professional reputation in our final hearing, but those claims were dismissed almost immediately. Last week, my mom sent me a Facebook screenshot of Connor at some charity gala with his new girlfriend. My first reaction wasn't jealousy or anger. It was pure, unadulterated relief. Relief that he's someone else's problem now. Relief that I don't have to wonder if every smile, every kind word, every gesture of affection is part of some elaborate performance designed to access my family's money. The money wife is dead. Long live just plain Natalie. Oh, remember that second phone I found with the mysterious contact D? Turns out D stands for Denise, Connor's ex-girlfriend from college, who conveniently reached out to him 6 months after our wedding. Apparently they'd been in contact the entire time we were married, with Connor sending her money regularly and promising they'd be together once the plan was complete. She attached screenshots of their conversations as proof, including one where he told her our vow renewal was the last hurdle before they could move to phase 2. I wasn't even angry when I read her message. I just felt sorry for her. She actually believes she's special, that he wouldn't do to her what he did to me. I sent her back one message. Good luck, you'll need it. Many have asked if I'm still in contact with Connor's family. His parents actually reached out to apologize after everything came to light. They had no idea what he'd done and were horrified. We exchange holiday cards but nothing more. Some connections just aren't worth maintaining.